I'm Dr. Stacey Hume. I am from the University of Alberta in Edmonton, Canada, and I run a genetic testing lab. And I also do research. I work with Dr. Ian McDonald, studying patients that have a diagnosis of choroideremia, but we have yet to identify a mutation, and also looking towards what actually causes choroideremia. Well, I would absolutely describe Dr. McDonald as being the grandfather of choroideremia. His lab has been doing choroideremia research since I actually started my PhD. And so the amount of knowledge that has come from his lab, in fact, when we started genetic testing officially for the province, we got help from Dr. McDonald and his research lab because he had been doing it far longer than us. So he actually got us up and going. So he's such a great advocate and an amazing researcher. So genetics really has come a long way, and even in the time that I've been in the field, which is 20 years, um, the technology has improved greatly. And in fact, I heard a patient today saying that they couldn't diagnose her 12 years ago, which amazes me because it would be easy to diagnose somebody for their gene mutation now. And in fact, we heard today about the large panels of genes that they are running. And not to say that that's needed for choroideremia, but it just shows you how fast genetics is moving, that we've gone from having difficulty 12 years ago getting a diagnostic result for a woman to now being able to sequence the entire human genome. So although we can do that, we have yet to figure out what all of those variants mean in the human genome and how they exactly cause disease. So I think in the next 10, 20 years, we're going to find a big emphasis put on discovering which variants contribute to disease and which variants only contribute to benign things that make us all humans. We don't use the word mutations anymore. It really does have a negative connotation. So they decided to get rid of the word mutations and go with variants. And so we all carry variants, every single one of us. Some of them are pathogenic and some of them are benign. So we prefer to use the word variants, and then we just describe them using an adjective at the beginning. So we're really trying to get away from the word mutation. This is my first time at such a conference. Typically when I go to conferences, it's always scientific meetings and you meet other researchers and we all talk in our jargon, and we forget that there's a patient behind the scene, that we're actually, that's the reason that we're there, is we're working on these disorders that really do affect human lives. So to be able to go to a conference and actually meet patients really puts an emphasis on the importance of the work that we're doing, and it sends us home with a renewed vigor and realizing that we need to work harder and faster and somehow pull more hours out of the day than what we've managed to do, because there's people at the end of the line that are waiting and depending on that. They're a very well-informed group. In fact, I sat behind a family that was describing what X-linked inheritance was, and I was blown away at how perfect the description was, that this family knows exactly, what they've got, how they got it, and how they're passing it along. And I think by having such an educated and engaged community, that has really strengthened research in CHM as a whole. You look at this disease over other disease, like the clinical trials that are happening in choroideremia that are not happening in other rare diseases, is all thanks to the donors in the foundation that are pulling together and making this happen. That isn't happening for lots of other rare disorders. Clinical trials, they are great, but they are limited and they are trials. They're exactly what we said. They're not a guarantee, and they're not yet the cure. But only by families coming together and learning about it and promoting what they have and what they've seen and what their experience is, and doing fundraising. In fact, I had a family that came up to me today and said they have another individual in their family that was also late onset. And would I be interested in obtaining that sample? And absolutely, because if we find something that we're looking for in my research, I would love to be able to correlate that to other families. If I didn't come to the meeting and hadn't met this patient, I wouldn't have had access to that information or that sample. So for sure, mixing researchers and families is going to only strengthen our ability to come up with a global solution to this. We're not going to do it without having each other. I wouldn't mind speaking about the money that everyone raises. I think the one thing that we are very cognizant of in research is every dollar is precious. And we really do think about how we're going to spend every dollar that comes about. You know, we were fortunate with our CRF funding that we were able to fly one of our patients over to actually obtain his cells, which wouldn't have been possible through a large, you know, grant. They wouldn't have been interested in paying for the flight of somebody to come over. But having those cells is so crucially important. So I think trusting us with hard-earned money is such an honor, and we don't take that lightly, and we're always very careful on what we're doing and how we're spending it, and trying to get as much as we can out of as little as we can. Yeah, so we are, you know, we start with the very basics, a project, an idea. We obtain the samples that we need from the patients many times. We're able to culture those and then develop reagents and techniques. And right now we're hoping that we can interest a pharma company in this potential drug that we have looked at. And, you know, yes, this particular drug might only help a subset of patients, but the more patients that we can help and the more knowledge that we gain into the disorder, eventually we are going to be able to help everyone. I would highly encourage families to come. I think they gain a lot out of meeting each other, because I think the support network, I can tell being here, is incredible. People that have come from across the world, or definitely across the country, and you know, they've obviously met before. Their laughter, they're sitting together, and I think getting to meet us as researchers and realizing that we're real people, even though we're usually very shy and behind the scenes and working, you know, quietly and often not, you know, meeting patients. I think putting that mix together, it creates a real special environment and hopefully the patients go home feeling content that change is happening and that we are working hard towards it, and that their efforts to fundraising and supporting us are worthwhile, and that we do care about them. We really do want to make a difference. That's why we go into the field to begin with. We want to make a difference.